So I think I'll just start off with explaining how we cope, because it will explain as we go forward. To deal with perception, feelings, energy, health, everything in general, we need to take care of ourselves. So I highly emphasize self-care. Now, self-care is not going to get our nails done or our hair done or going for a massage. It's basically acknowledging your being as being important and taking care of yourself. Because if you are not okay inside, things outside of you are going to be very overwhelming and coping will be a lot harder. So self-care is divided into a couple of categories. We've got social self-care, physical self-care, emotional and psychological self-care, financial self-care, and also spiritual self-care. So I recommend that you identify small little things that you can do that fall into those categories and try and incorporate every single aspect of self-care into a day. So it might sound like a lot of work, but it can be anything like waking up in the morning and going to sit outside and be mindful, do some breathing exercises, phone a friend, write in a journal, anything. As long as we have an activity that falls into every single category in a day, that improves our perception of our sense of control and our well-being. It also affects our feelings. So it's easier for us to feel more upbeat, have more energy, be more positive, and things like that. So self-care is very, very important. Now, a thing with self-care that also affects energy is our sleeping patterns. We need to practice good sleeping patterns, and that usually refers to sleep hygiene. So if we do not have good sleeping habits, it will have a huge impact on your physical, mental health, as well as obviously your energy levels, which affects how you do things and when you do things and your motivation. So I'm just quickly going to give some tips on sleep hygiene. In order for a person to be at a full functioning level, you need to have a good night's rest. Now, good night's rest refers to when you put your head down on the pillow, it takes you about 10 minutes to fall asleep, sleeping throughout the night without waking up, and waking up in the morning and feeling refreshed. So if you have difficulty sleeping, or if you are waking up, or if you don't have a proper routine where you go to bed the same time every night and wake up the same time every morning, I think it's important to establish a good sleeping routine. That would include avoiding any technology an hour before bed, because we know that technology has a significant impact on our ability to kind of shut down, because of our the screens and the light kind of tricks our brain into thinking that it's not bedtime, it's still daytime, and so our circadian rhythms can get mushed up, and which makes sleeping difficult. So an hour before bed, you need to get away from laptops, iPads, cell phones, TV, things like that. We also need to create a space for us to sleep, and a space for us to work, and a space for us to kind of manage the kids. All of those things can't just happen in one place. So our bedrooms are for sleeping, and thus we should not be working while sitting on the bed and things like that. There's lots of other things that you can do. If you are someone who has who feels more energized at night, but it's actually bedtime, I always say no longer than 20 minutes tossing and turning in bed. You get up, you go make yourself a chamomile cup of tea, and you try again. Try journaling. Don't lay there and just toss and turn. I think it's very important to start with the sleeping pattern, because it does have a significant impact on our ability to think and our memory. And so just by improving our quality of sleep, we improve our mood, and also our ability to function better throughout the day. You guys can just go Google sleep hygiene. There's a lot of techniques that you can find. And I think everyone uses what works for them, because all of us are different. Generally, our health is not only our physical health. Our mental health is actually just as important as our physical health, and the two speak to each other. So when we are not maintaining our physical well-being, our mental well-being will suffer. And if we are not looking after ourselves mentally, it becomes a little bit more difficult to look after ourselves physically. So once again, incorporating the self-care, the different aspects of self-care into a day to make sure we speak to the mental well-being as well as the physical well-being. And now, this is the thing that came up in the polls is food. Food, okay. And I think it's quite normal because we are so stressed and we are at home. We use certain things like food, tobacco, or let me just call it cigarettes, alcohol, social media, whatever you do, we use it as means of coping. To kind of distract ourselves and to deal with our stress levels, but it's not necessarily a healthy coping mechanism. It's a bad habit. So we need to try and replace these bad habits with better habits, thus taking us back to those things we addressed in the beginning, those little elements of self-care. So I think if I could give some advice on how to manage using food as a coping skill, it's to know how you feel, become aware of what you are feeling. If you're feeling bored, we tend to eat. If we're feeling tired, we tend to eat more. If we are feeling anxious or sad, we tend to go to the thing that we know the best, that makes us feel better. But it's not a long-term coping skill. It just helps you in that moment, and the consequences are usually negative. So become aware of what you're feeling and try to manage those emotions appropriately. So if you're feeling anxious, you can journal, you can identify thoughts and challenge your thoughts. You can do breathing exercises, you can go for a walk, take a break, whatever it is. If you're feeling sad, deal with sadness in an appropriate way. So just by becoming aware of what we're feeling, we can deal with those feelings in a better way than just running to food. I also think we need to be aware, especially during this time, how bad coping skills can eventually turn to full-blown addictions, like alcoholism or various substances, or even process addictions. You can become addicted to food. And so it's best to become aware and prevent rather than to treat. So hopefully by having a schedule and incorporating those little elements of self-care, you'd be better able to manage and not go to the first thing that makes you feel better. I want to address the fact that there is a difference between a feeling of being down and actual depression, feeling depressed, and then also feeling a little bit anxious compared to a full-blown anxiety disorder. If you have been diagnosed with any underlying mental health condition, I think having put what I say to practice and not feeling better even though you are trying, it's important to just reconsult with your physician or psychiatrist or psychologist. If you suspect that you might be bordering lower levels of functioning or not being able to manage, it is also important to go seek professional help. If you have tried everything and it is not working, and there has been a 2-week period for 2 weeks, and nothing has improved, you can't do it by yourself. And I think the reason we tend to, not reach out, it's because we feel embarrassed. It's difficult to say, I used to be a high functioning individual. I used to be able to do this and this and this, and I just can't do it. So if you can't do simple tasks like get out of bed, brush your teeth, have a shower, eat, no appetite or overeating, things like that, and it's lasted for 2 weeks consecutively, then it's not something that you would be able to get better, because anxiety, depression, any psychiatric condition it's chemical based, and so we do need a medical intervention or psychiatric intervention. So I just want to encourage everyone not to be scared to say it's I'm not coping.
Melandri, can I just weigh in here, please?
Yes.
In your work as a counselling psychologist in the last few weeks, can you give us an indication of how serious this problem is, that people really cease to function and perform their activities of daily living? How often has that been a real problem?
Yes. I think in the beginning, people weren't aware that they were actually backsliding or going a little bit backwards. And so it started happening long before they started reaching out. So now that they've started reaching out, it's trying to manage or deal with ailments that are quite severe and difficult, like actual difficulty coping with life. And it has increased significantly. And I think it's because if we were just more aware when this thing started and reaching out, we could have actually intervened a lot sooner. But it has increased significantly, and I do feel that it is going to continue to increase because now there's a whole lot of financial implications coming in as well, not just social isolation. So yeah, it is quite severe. And then just with regards to addiction, those who have done programs and who are in recovery, social isolation for them is even more difficult, because that used to be their new form of coping, is being around people, like-minded people, sharing the same thing. And now it's been taken away. So addiction in general, people in this stage, people are relapsing, and things are more difficult for those individuals as well.
For those of us who don't want to admit that we're fully addicted, but only sort of are consuming a little bit too much social media and eating too much and not taking care of our sleep patterns and ending up tired in the day, you spoke of how important it is to keep a balance between your physical and your mental and your spiritual health. So how do I break this vicious cycle if I've already moved down the path a little bit too far, or down the spiral a little bit too far? Because it is a bit of a dilemma. How do I work my way out of it and get physically active? Maybe you can share with us some techniques of how to do that.
I think the first thing is to actually acknowledge that you are using things that are not good for you to make you feel better. So you are using social media or alcohol or food or social, I don't know if I've said social media, or whatever it is that you use as a crutch. And so if you can just become aware of that, then you can start implementing small things to try and change that. Like let's use cigarettes as an example. Because we are stressed, people are they most likely will smoke a little bit more. So if you're noticing you're smoking a little bit more than usual, then actually put a time schedule for your cigarettes, or divide your cigarettes. Say I usually smoke 1 pack a day, and so I'm only allowing myself 1 pack a day, and try and schedule breaks where you don't just sit and smoke. You only allowed to smoke in a break. I always say, if you're working from home, it's so easy just to sit and be on your laptop and smoke without even realizing you're smoking. So force yourself to implement things to make it more difficult for you to use those things. Like, I'm only allowed to smoke outside, so I have to walk outside to smoke. Small things like that. But I honestly think that if you feel like you are worried, reach out, speak to someone. A family member doesn't necessarily have to be a professional now. But just speaking to someone and voicing your feelings will reduce the anxiety or whatever's going on inside, which will eventually also influence your usage of processes or substances to cope.